Welcome in, everybody. It's the Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. I'm your host, Coach Matthew Mitchell, and we are here for you each and every week to help you move forward in your leadership journey, in your personal growth journey, and that's what we are passionate about doing. Please check us out at CoachMatthewMitchell.com. You can find every possible way we can support you on this journey of personal growth, of leadership. We are doing keynote speeches. We are coaching. We are consulting. We have workshops going on. We are doing everything we can to help you move forward using the winning tools, honesty, hard work, and discipline. That's what we teach. And we can really bring those tools alive in your life and in your business and help you move toward success. And also right now we have Ready to Win, the book, our USA Today best-selling book, Ready to Win, How Great Leaders Succeed Through Preparation. Have a terrific workshop. The Ready to Win workshop really helps your team bring alive how powerful preparation can be in you being more productive, more successful. And we believe this preparation powerfully positions you to win. You can get a copy of that book anywhere books are sold, and it is proving to be a powerful force in people's lives. We're getting so many great reviews about the book, so I encourage you to go look at that. But at CoachMatthewMitchell.com, you can book a call with us, and we will step into your life, step into your business, and help you move forward. Speaking of Ready to Win, last fall we did a series of interviews with some leaders that I respect and have made a huge impact on my life. And this week, we're going to bring you one of the interviews we did for our Ready to Win book summit, Carolyn Peck. Carolyn Peck is a Hall of Fame basketball coach. She is currently an ESPN analyst and just one of the big figures in the game of basketball. She was the very first African-American woman to lead a team to the national championship. In 1999, she was the head coach for the national champion Purdue Boilermakers. Is that possible to say that word? I don't know if you grew up in Louisville, Mississippi, if you can say Boilermaker. Okay, but it's a mouthful for me when I say Purdue Boilermakers. There we go. She was the head coach and won the national championship. She's still the youngest coach to ever lead a team to a women's national basketball championship. She was 33 years old. She is now, as I said, on ESPN and just one of the leading figures in the game of women's basketball, both in the professional and college ranks, and a 2023 Women's Basketball Hall of Fame inductee. Carolyn and I worked together at the University of Florida, and I learned so much from the year that I spent under her as her assistant coach. We're going to talk about those things in the interview, and after the interview, I will catch up with you and tell you some things that stood out to me. But right now, I want you to settle in and get ready for some great leadership insights about preparation, about how preparation can get you ready to win. This is Hall of Fame basketball coach, Carolyn Peck. Hello, Carolyn.
Hey, Matthew.
It is so good to be with you. Thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate it, and it's so great to see you.
It's good to see you. It's been a while.
I know it. Well, I've seen you a bunch because you have been so busy. What an exciting WNBA season, and as we're taping this, we're heading into the college season. But you have been a busy broadcaster, haven't you?
I have been. I mean, the WNBA finals went to 5 games, and then they even took it to overtime. So we didn't want the WNBA season to end, but now college has started. So women's basketball, here we go.
Yeah, such an exciting time for the sport, and you were right in the middle of it. And you and I have known each other for so long, and you've been such a huge influence on my life and my career. And I'm excited to share this with our audience today. But let's go back to Carolyn Peck, the young person growing up in Tennessee and with your great family, and talk to us about where your love for basketball came from and how it developed, and maybe at what point in your career did you start to notice that you had some talent and some giftedness, and talk to us about the early part of your journey.
Oh gosh, Matthew. I go back all the way to, really, I have an older brother, Stephen, who is 5 years older than me, and he was bringing home all these trophies and awards and ribbons, and I was like, I want one of those. And so I started as a swimmer. Then, you couldn't start playing basketball in elementary school until you were in the sixth grade. And I went to try out, but Matthew, I tried out for basketball and cheerleading. Now, I swear, I think it was a conspiracy because I was taller than everybody, and they posted the finals for the basketball team, and they said if you made the finals for basketball, you couldn't go to the finals of the cheerleading. And I'm like, well, let me decide, but they decided for me. I had a PE teacher, um, Joyce Williams, and Mr. Osborne, and because I was tall, my mom, my mother. Well, she
Yes.
had me in. I did tap, ballet, jazz, so I had a little bit of coordination. So I think that Coach Osborne, Coach Williams recognized that I could have basketball talent, and so they would, it was always. It seemed like PE class would get over early just so that I could have a little individual workout because they were working on their basketball team.
Yeah.
Then middle school, then when I got to high school, I started getting recognition of and getting recruited. And even Pat Summitt came to speak at one of our high school banquets. And I'll never forget, I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I know you know Pat real well too, but she said she did not know one successful person that ever did it by themselves.
Mm.
And that is something that has always stuck with me. And so the team aspect and Coach Roach, my high school coach, and we really worked as a team. But, when I was 6'3", 6'4" in high school, everything was run to me, but he did it in a way that everybody felt important. And so that teamwork, and then Phil Lee recruited me at Vanderbilt. I actually, and this was before the days of early commitment, and I committed early before my right after my sophomore year, over the summer, going in my junior year, and he was everywhere. And I mean, anywhere I played, he was there. And it was in the days of long distance
Yeah.
where you had to pay for long distance.
Right.
And he was still, he would call, and then, if I called him, then, it's like my parents like keep it short because we're paying for this. But and then, just deciding to go to Vanderbilt, and I was recruited by Pat
Yeah.
because I grew up just 30 minutes,
Yeah.
from Tennessee, and I just wanted to go somewhere where it hadn't been done before. She'd kind of established Tennessee as a dominant program. Vanderbilt had just kind of gotten on the scene, but the NCAA tournaments had started. They weren't there yet. So I wanted to go do something different. And it was a small, intimate campus. And so, that was kind of how it all started rolling in
Yeah.
basketball.
Yeah. At Vanderbilt, what was that transition like from high school to college? And uh, we're talking a lot right now about preparation. And I always noticed when a player would come from high school to college, there was a bit of an adjustment because you go from being, the best player on the court all the time virtually to now you're much more in your peer group physically and talent wise. And I always thought there was a bit of an adjustment. What was that like for you in your playing career?
Matthew, one of my biggest fears was when I was going to college was that I wasn't going to be as good as I was in high school. And so over that summer leading up to, I'm calling Teresa Lawrence and Phil Lee, and I'm asking them, what do I need to do? How much, my biggest fear was not being in shape. Like
Yeah.
and growing up in East Tennessee, there are plenty of hills to run. So I was like, whatever, because I knew that going to college was going to be different as far as conditioning than it was in high school. So prepping for that, and when you're a prideful player, you don't want to go in and not be very good. And I didn't want to go in and be one of these players that didn't play.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time in the gym, and I've got two brothers. One is 6'4" and one is 6'7". And so we would go over to Carson Newman College on Sundays after church, and I had to wait my turn until you've got five that get the first run, and then you get picked up. And so when they started picking me up to play with the guys, I was like, okay, this will help prepare me for college. So I think that I had a good foundation and really a base to make the transition to college. It was the academic part. Now, I thought that I was, an honor student at Jefferson County High School, but Matthew, that first English class, and I got that first paper back, and the letter on the top of that paper was not an A, B, or a C. I was like, oh my goodness. So that was a bigger adjustment off the court than it
Yeah.
was being a player on the court.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you were able to have a very successful career as a player at Vanderbilt. And so now, as you're thinking about your career and as a young person leaving college, are you thinking about coaching? Did you make that decision early, or talk us through that move from college into the professional world?
My senior year in college, Matthew, my mindset was I was going to have a corner corporate office.
Yeah.
Now, doing what? I don't know, but
Yeah.
I wanted a corporate office. I wanted to wear the nice clothes and, have the expense paid lunches and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And first year out, I sold television advertising for WSMV. I was selling the commercials. And then while I was in college, I interviewed with a lot of different people, and a pharmaceutical company then recruited me to go to work for Merck Sharp and Dome. Well, after working for them for 2 years, I was like, man, playing basketball would have been a whole lot more fun, because I had an opportunity to go play overseas, but I chickened out, and I was like, no, I'm ready to get into the corporate world. So I went to Japan, and then I went to Italy. Or I went to Italy first, and then I went to Japan, played 2 years over there. But when I went to Italy, Merck Sharp and Dome gave me paid personal leave. Matthew,
Wow.
they paid me to go play overseas. I
Wow.
had the right manager.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But then when I came back and decided to go to Japan, then I had to resign from the pharmaceutical company. And I did that in Japan for 2 years. Well, when I came home, I was working camps. Yeah, I would work camps in the off season and all. And I was at the University of Kentucky at a USA basketball tryout. And Karen Booker, who played with me at Vanderbilt, was trying out. And so I was like, I'll go over and watch Book play. And I'm sitting in the stands watching, and Mickey DeMoss comes over to me. She's assistant at Tennessee. And she said, Peck, what are you doing now? Because they closed the market for women to play, American women to play in Japan. So I was trying to decide whether I was going to go play back over in Europe, which was a longer season. I didn't know about what I was going to do. She said, have you ever thought about coaching? Matthew, I lied. I said, yeah, I sure have. And so she's like, oh, great. I'll go back and talk to Pat because we may have an opening. So I was like, okay. And Matthew, this is so funny. I go back to Nashville. I was living in Nashville. I was working a camp at the Jewish Community Center. I'll never forget it. And so, there's a time change from Knoxville to Nashville.
Yep.
So
Yep.
when you call from Knoxville, it's an hour earlier in Nashville. And it was like, I don't know, 6:30 in the morning. My phone rings. I answer it. The person on the other line says, I said, hello. And she said, could I speak to Carolyn Peck? And I said, well, can you tell me who's calling? And she said, this is Pat Summit. I went, hold on a second. And I was like, hey, Pat, how are you doing? Because, Pat recruited me in college, and that was one of the hardest things was to tell her no. And so she invited me to come work her camp, and she said, let's see if it's a fit. And after hanging out with Mickey and Holly and Pat for 2 weeks, and then Mickey and Holly took me to Calhoun's. After camp was over, Pat said, take her there. She had to close up a million things.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting at Calhoun's, and the waitress came by and said, I asked Holly, what would you like to drink? She said, I'll have a Miller Lite. Mickey DeMall said, me too. So then she looked at me, and I said, well, I'll have one too. And both Mickey and Holly went, you're hired. So, hey, that's how I got my first coaching job at the University of Tennessee.
It's so great. It's we share that similar experience, and I think similar thing for me. I think my love for chicken wings and beer really helped me get in the same as it did for you, because I'd work camp and I've always said this. They could have hired 10,000 people to do the job I was doing, but the fact that I don't know what Mickey saw in me, but she liked it, and I'd go after camp and we'd go get chicken wings and beer, and it just they were such a fun group of people, and these are some of the greatest coaches of all time that we got to get our introduction to college coaching. And it's what a gift, what a blessing for both of us. And so that leads me to this question I'm so interested in is when you work with someone like Pat and Mickey and Holly, and you're able to be with them every day, people are always asking me, what did you learn? What did you learn? And you could write a book on it, but what stands out to you when you think back on that experience? What do you feel like you really gained, or it's top of your mind that you could share with the audience that was so impactful about working for those people? They're just incredible coaches.
Well, there's two things, Matthew. One, I think that is the biggest reason that program was as successful as it was, is Pat in charge, and she sincerely cared about the people in her program. And it didn't matter whether you didn't play, or if you're the trainer, the manager. I was a restricted earnings coach. She made you feel like you were of huge importance. She saw you, she cared, she loved you. And I think that because she expressed that and showed that and lived that, everybody wanted to run through a wall for her. The other thing is the art of preparation. There wasn't a day that you could go over to Pat's house. If there was a basketball game on, it was on the television somewhere. And she was always trying to learn from anybody. If it was a men's game, an NBA, another women's team playing, I've been recruiting with her, and she would like something a high school coach ran, and she would write it down. Like the art of preparation. And I was the restricted earnings coach, so scouting was my baby. And she had instilled in me to try to stay a step ahead of her. Now, that's hard. Yeah. And so I'd even try to beat her in the office. And this was back in the days when, Matthew, breaking down film with 2 VCRs, there was none of this, just do it on the computer.
Right, exactly.
So you had your hands, the deck set up, really had 3 computers, one playing and the other recording, the other one, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And, Pat would come in, and something she would have thought of at home, and she would come in and go, Carolyn, I want to see the out of bounds plays, or, what do they do late game situation. And so that taught me, I was like, okay, I got to be prepared for whatever question she may ask. And then when we would put a scouting report together, at first I'm like, I got to put everything in there to have it for Pat and for the players. And she would tell me, they don't have to know everything. but we do. So if the situation presented itself, then, so I thought it was real important. And as I was coaching, I always thought about that I didn't ever want to be in a position where a player asked me a question or we got in a situation and I hadn't prepared for it. So I may not put everything in the scouting report, but what the key things they need to know. But if that situation presented itself, the art of preparation from Pat, she would look at different things. That's why she never panicked at the end of games.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she had a situation for everything that might present itself.
Yeah, in the it's so true, and I write about that in this new book. Is Mickey and Pat both were just so passionate about preparation. I mean, it was so important, and then that informed me in my journey of you really are there to serve the players and help the players and make sure that they're able to have the information that they need. And so the greatest story I have on preparation for Pat, though, Carolyn, you'll get a kick out of this. It had nothing to do with the basketball court. So I got hired as a graduate assistant, and I had been driving up from Mississippi to Knoxville the previous 4 summers in a Caprice Classic that finally broke down on the side of the road on the way to camp with about 250,000 miles on it. And so then I got a Toyota Tacoma so I could get to camp. And so that's how I was rolling at the time. So the first day I went in the office, Pat was supposed to fly out to Bristol for a huge East Tennessee Booster Club meeting. Well, something happened with the plane, so she said, "Get in the car. You're driving me out to Bristol." And they'd won, 3 national titles in a row, and she had, at this point in time, the biggest, longest Mercedes-Benz I'd ever seen in my life, a big white Mercedes-Benz. And she said, "You're driving." And I got in that thing, and we start driving out to Bristol. And I was just, driving along. And she said, we need to get there a little bit faster. So I got up to about 80 miles an hour. And then she's like, "We got to go faster." And she had 2 phones. That was back when the cell phones just came out. So she's talking to the president of the United States on one. And then she talked to an NFL coach or something. Like, everybody was calling her. So finally, she's just like, we got to get over there. So now I'm going like 100 and 110, and Tennessee Highway Patrol stops me.
Oh,
and
no.
I'm like, "Oh, my gosh." She said, "Don't worry about that. I got this. Don't worry about this." So guy walks up there, and he goes, "Coach, y'all ain't playing basketball out here today, are you?" She said, "No, we got to get to Viking Hall for this." And she said, this boy's just following my orders. Don't, it's my fault. And he said, "Well, if you got to get there, I'll lead you in." He said, "You wouldn't happen to have a basketball on you, would you?" She said, "I sure do." She got out. She had a basketball in the trunk. Wrote her, signed it for him. He led us into Bristol. And so I said, "Coach, that was lucky you had a basketball." She said, "That wasn't luck. That was preparation." You always got to be ready. That was not luck. I was ready for this moment. So she was ready at all times. Yeah. So that's so great. So Carolyn, you learned from some great coaches, and now take us to the moment where you are now. I love the story of what happened at Purdue, and how you navigated that opportunity. And you become a head coach, and you really weren't necessarily planning on being the head coach. And please tell our audience about that experience and what really led to a historic achievement.
Well, after the 96-97 Olympics, Nell Fortner was an assistant coach there. She got the head job at Purdue and asked me to come be her assistant. And let me tell you, I love Nell. She loves life. She loves the game. She inspires players to play. I was going to be her assistant forever. Well, after her first year, she was then offered to coach the national team that would become the head coach for the next Olympic team. So after we got beat in the NCAA tournament, she called us over to the house, or her staff. And so we're at her house. She said, well, y'all, I got some good news and some bad news. So I was like, well, what's the bad news? And so Nell says, well, I've been offered to be the national team coach and go on to the Olympics. I'm like, Nell, that's the good news. And she said, well, no, the good news is I've recommended you be the head coach. And I looked at her and I said, have you lost your mind? Because I had only been a restricted earnings coach at Tennessee for 2 years and then the assistant at Kentucky and an assistant for her. That was my whole experience. And now I'm going to take over a Big Ten team. So we went back and forth and all. And I called Pat again. And so I'm talking to her and I'm like, they want me to take this over. And, I'm telling her about my limited experience. And I was like, Pat, I don't know if I'm ready. I'm not ready. And she goes, well, where you want to go get ready? You want to go coach high school or junior college or lower division? Or do you want to get ready, cutting your teeth in a major conference in the Big Ten? So I'm like, okay. And she said, you'll get ready. And Billy Moore is a friend of hers, great coached the Olympics, UCLA. She came in and, watched some of my practices and did some consulting with me. And so after the first year, we went to the Elite Eight. And so I was like, okay. Now I had great leaders because I had Ukari Figs and Stephanie White. We had signed Katie Douglas, Camille Cooper. So we had a good team. But over the summer, after going to the Elite Eight, Pat Williams calls me from the WNBA, from the Orlando Magic, and he says, we're going to start a WNBA team, and we'd like to talk to you about being our GM and head coach. I'm like, what? And he's like, just come down to Orlando and let's just visit. So I go down there. Matthew, to be honest with you, at Purdue, when I took the head job, it was for $90,000.
Yeah.
So that's before the contracts for women have gotten to where they were.
Yeah.
And so when we get to Orlando, he starts talking about tripling that. I'm like, and my dream had always been to coach at the professional level, but I thought it would be in the NBA. This is before the WNBA started. So I had to call Ukari Figs and Stephanie White and kind of get their feel on it. So, Purdue had gone through some transition. Lynn Dunn had been let go.
Yeah.
Then Nell Fortner left. So I would be the third head coach. So when I'm talking to Ukari Figs, she goes, well, Carolyn, she said, I know you would never hold me back if I had an opportunity to go pro. So I get that. And each year I've had a new head coach, our team's gone a little bit further. So I'm like, okay. So I'm starting to think about, wait a minute. We made it to the Elite Eight. We could go to the Final Four. So I'm like, whoa. So then I call Steph. They're out at USA Basketball Trials. Steph is furious. And she let me have it. She said, we have everything to win a national championship. You've got to stay. And I just sat there and I listened to her. And then went back, talked to my family, talked to my agent, and my agent, he said, do you want to stay? And I was like, yeah, if we could work out, well, I could coach this year and then go to the pros. So he said, hang on. So he made some phone calls, came back, and he said, you're going to go into the AD's office and you're going to tell them that you're staying. Now, if they don't want you to stay, then they have to fire you. And then it was a whole financial thing. They'd have to pay me and all that kind of stuff. And I said, I'm staying. And I'm going to coach this year, and then I'm going to go. And Matthew, that was a season that taught me about what the true meaning of commitment is. Because the players knew I was leaving, but they were committed to me and each other to be on a common mission. And it talk about staying laser focused on what the mission was and winning a national championship. We knew that we had to put the work in over the summer because we went overseas and played. In the preseason, our chemistry had to be ultra close. And then like our scouting reports and everything, like nobody could take any team for granted. We were on a mission. We didn't even put the names of the opponents on our scouting report. It was opponent 1, opponent 2,
Mm.
opponent 3. And I had one of my books of preparation was The Japanese Art of War.
Mm.
And it talked about a sense of normalcy. And Steph always said that I made that word up, but it was, we wanted to play at a championship level every day.
Mm.
So we didn't get up just to play Tennessee or get up just to play Louisiana Tech. If we were playing Ball State, we wanted to play
Mm.
just as hard. So it was just a habit. And that's how these women operated. So that when we got to the national championship game, we had beaten Louisiana Tech, which I thought was the toughest game of any because they had Monica Maxwell. I
Yeah,
mean,
great
you know,
team.
they were
Yeah.
amazing. We were down at 7 points at the half to Duke in the final game. And I went in and I remembered in the Elite Eight the year before, Louisiana Tech, we were leading and Louisiana Tech took it from us. So in that championship game, that team's sitting there and Steph and Kari are sitting there. You can tell they're fuming. And I walked out and I said, y'all, we're exactly where we want to be. And they looked at me like I had a third eye. And they were like, what? And I said, do you remember Louisiana Tech last year? They took it from us. We're fixing to do the same thing to Duke, and they're not going to know what hit them. And Steph jumped up and used some choice words of blank, yeah. And I was like, I don't have to say anything else. And that second half, they just took off. But it was, and remember, Katie Douglas was on that team. And before she signed to come to Purdue, she lost her father to
Mm.
cancer.
Mm.
And it was just so ironic that when the clock's ticking down, the ball is in Katie's hands. I mean, it's just things like that were, memorable. We lost that summer. We lost Tiffany Young,
Mm.
who was just a bright light, a spark of energy, and she got killed by a drunk driver.
Mm.
And that was crushing. But like each player had such a special place on that team because I go back to the kids can teach you things, and these young women demonstrated the truest meaning of commitment,
Mm.
and that's what allowed us to win the championship in '99.
Yeah, amazing. Just an amazing accomplishment and season. And then I want to talk about one of the great lessons I learned in coaching was the year that I worked for you. You were kind enough to employ me and give me a job at the University of Florida. And it was just an amazing experience about how to lead through adversity. And we, if you remember, we had a talented team. We had some injuries, and we were just losing close games. And the my young, inexperienced mind was like, this is, this is kind of a hopeless cause. I would think so many times. And you just kept showing up every day with such a positive enthusiasm to try to help the kids that it just really transformed what was what you thought losing was negative, and then you just were able to shift it and teach me how to care about people and how to show up during adversity, which would serve me so well because we all, as leaders, we all go through it. And so, what can you share with us about leading through adversity, and where did you find that strength to set such a great leadership example that still impacts me to this day?
One of the things that Nell Fortner said one of our first days at Purdue was, whenever a kid walks into this office, you drop whatever you're doing, they come first.
Mm.
Because without them, we would not have the opportunity to do what we do. And then I think that looking back as a player, you think about what you wanted from your coach.
Mm.
And so I wanted to give that to those players because we know at college, being a college athlete is not easy. It's very hard. It's very easy to be distracted. You understand the age that they are, the maturation level where they are, and they're not adults. They don't think like us. And it's easy for them to repeat a behavior that they see. And so I wanted them to see a behavior that would be beneficial to them.
Mm.
I mean, you know me, Matthew. I think that negative energy is a waste of time.
Mm.
It doesn't benefit you in any way. And so why drag yourself down? Because I feel like when you're dragging yourself down, that makes the load that much heavier.
Mm.
And so there's not anything you can do to change the past, but there is something you can do to affect the future. And so I think that that's why, I mean, losing hurts,
Mm.
but losing isn't everything that this game is about. And when we would go into recruits' homes, I would talk about this is not a decision for the next 40 years, but the next 4 years, but the next 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so in understanding how this was going to affect them down the road, you remember Tanisha
Yeah.
Gregg? She sent me a long letter on Facebook, and we went through some tough lessons with T.
Yeah.
Gregg.
Yeah.
And she thanked me for the tough lessons, and then understood, now this is 4 or 5 years, down the road after she's out. That to me is my national championship.
Mm.
When you can feel like you didn't give in to the difficulty, but to persevere and show them a way to persevere as well. I think that, we look at Vanessa Hayden goes all the way to be drafted in the top 4 in the WNBA and came from a tough situation in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's my national championship at the University of Florida. To see those players to be able to persevere and to graduate, even Bernice Mosby, who I had to let go on the team, went to Baylor and was able to persevere there. But she has, and Kim Mulkey even told me this, that Bernice said that was the best thing that could have ever happened to her, for her to understand, okay, this is not a kid game anymore. I've got to grow up. And sometimes it's those drastic situations. And so I don't regret those situations. They were tough. They were hard as heck to go through. But, I just feel like there's always something better.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's going to be great.
Yeah.
And what can I do today to make tomorrow great?
Yeah.
And so that just kind of, it's just kind of, and my mother has had terrible car accident when I was in college. She was diagnosed with colon cancer a few years after I graduated. She had a stroke 5 years ago, and that woman is still here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, it's kind of the basketball theme. As long as there's time on the clock, you got a chance to win. That kind of mentality is just something that has been ingrained in me.
It's such a great lesson, I think, for all of our audience listening today, the impact our attitude can have on other people, and just the strength that you showed and impacted me in my career. And so I just it's one of the great gifts that you gave so many people, and so you impacted me and all those players. And so talk to us a little about what it was like to get the call for the Hall of Fame, and to think about your career mattering at that level, and you get inducted to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame.
Matthew, to be honest with you, it was never a call that I thought that I would ever get. Yeah, I just, because I was only a head coach for a short amount of time. Yeah, I won the national championship in 2 years, but then had an up and down success at Florida. And, at Florida, I got fired and then went to doing television and doing what I'm doing now. And a lot of times when I speak and I talk about getting fired, I see the room kind of cringe.
Mm.
And I feel like that was an opportunity to fail forward.
Mm.
And so in failing forward and as time went on, I was okay with where my career was and what I had done and what I was doing. And Pat Lowry called me. I was down in the Bahamas getting ready to call Battle Fort Atlantis, the tournament over Thanksgiving. And she called me and she said, "What are you doing?" And I was putting on my eyelashes, getting ready to do the game. And I'll be honest with you, my husband was there with me, and she gives me the news and starts reading because I had been on the board for the Women's Basketball Hall of
Yeah.
Fame, so I had the opportunity to call Delisha Milton Jones, and so I knew what the script was of when you let the recipients know. And she starts reading the script. And Matthew, I just start crying, and my eyelashes start popping off. I'm like, I'm gonna have to redo all of that because it had been something for so long. Your parents think that you should be recognized for everything you do,
Yeah.
and it was something that my mom and dad really wanted to see happen. And so when I got that call, I thought about them
Mm.
and
Mm.
the moment that they were going to get to see their only girl being inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. So that was amazing. And then I got to speak, and you know at the time I went into the Hall of Fame was about the time when women's basketball was really starting to start this tidal wave that has hit
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And so they asked me what I wanted my walk-in song to be, and it was Lizzo, and it was About Damn Time. And so it was more not just about me, but about women's basketball
Yeah.
because now people are really, locked in. It is so exciting
Yeah.
to see. We coached in gyms where there were 200 people.
Yeah.
And it's like, why couldn't every place be like Tennessee?
Yeah.
And now to go to LSU and go to Louisville and go to Baylor. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just so exciting. Iowa and what they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
It's just so exciting. I mean, the game is so fun right now.
Yeah. We've known it for a long time, and we've had a front row seat to this immense talent and what great athletes and great players, and so it's so much fun to see what's happening now. And I tell you, Carolyn, you are a leader of just great consequence, and you have just made so many contributions to so many lives. And I think today, what our audience can gain is more about the people than the trophies, the national championship. First African American head coach to win the national championship, a historic moment, a moment that will go down in history. You're forever enshrined in the Hall of Fame, yet you're talking about what's really been meaningful is the people that you've impacted, and I just think that makes you so special, and you are special, and I appreciate everything you've done for my life, and I know our audience is going to benefit from our conversation today. So thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, Matthew, so fun to get back with you and
Yeah.
come to Lexington. I'm looking for you.
Let's do it. We'll do it. Thank you so much, Carolyn, and we'll see you down the road.
All right, Matthew. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, we're back here on the Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. I hope you enjoyed that time with Carolyn Peck. What a fantastic leader and just a powerful force in my life. So positive. And there's three things that I want to share with you that really stood out to me in that interview. The first is Carolyn says you should sincerely care about every person on your team and make each person feel seen and heard. And that really speaks to how, as a leader, when we value our people, they feel valued and they are going to perform at a higher level when we do what Carolyn says, and that sincere care of others is so powerful. And let me tell you something. I don't know that I've ever been around a leader that did that better than Carolyn. And she has lived that all of her leadership journey. And I just love that part. Second thing, this is something that we all can do and I think all benefit from, but she said, show up each day with positive enthusiasm. We are in charge of the energy that we bring to our team each and every day. And as I've spoken about before, the season that we had together with Carolyn, when I was working for Carolyn at Florida, was not a successful season from the standpoint of wins and losses. It was a very, very difficult season. And anybody, when things are going great, you can show up with enthusiasm. That's not that tough to do. But when things are not going your way, to show up day after day with positive enthusiasm and pointing people forward as the leader is pretty remarkable. And I've got to tell you, Carolyn did that in an unbelievably powerful way that year. And it's been so long ago but I'm still impacted by that. I still remember her positive enthusiasm, and she still does it. She still does it to this day, even as a broadcaster and just as one of the leading figures in the game of women's basketball. If you're ever around Carolyn Peck, you're going to know that she has positive enthusiasm. So I just love that part. And then finally, what can I do today to make tomorrow great? And that really sums up preparation. That's such a powerful statement about preparation. How can I really invest in today and do the best that I can, and then also get a plan ready for tomorrow and now? When we talk about in the book, Ready to Win, How Great Leaders Succeed Through Preparation, we talk about the 5 levels of preparation. And those top 2 levels, committed and constant, that's where we want to live as leaders. And so that statement by Carolyn, what can I do today to make tomorrow great, I think is such a great reminder for us. So I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I enjoyed it. I had a great time, always do, with Carolyn. So grateful for the impact she's had on my career and my leadership journey. And I'm glad I got to share some time with her. And I'm glad I can share it with you on the Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. Please subscribe to the Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. It's great support for the podcast. And we're so fired up anytime that you choose to spend some of your precious free time to get better, to improve your personal growth, to strengthen your leadership journey by engaging with us here on the Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. We love bringing that to you each and every week. Go to CoachMatthewMitchell.com, book a call with us, and let's see how we can support your leadership journey and your personal growth journey through using the winning tools, honesty, hard work, and discipline. And it is just our absolute passion to step into teams and individuals' lives and help them improve and perform at their highest potential. So each and every week we're here with you. Thanks for joining us this week. Check us out again when we are back with you here on the Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. Have a great week, everybody.